Welcome to Blueprints number 8, and this one is just called The Other Woman. Into every man's middle years, there will come the other woman. I know it seems a little extreme to say that. Maybe not every man, and maybe that's right, but I don't think so. I think it comes to every man. I think in every man's middle years, there will come the other woman. The other woman is just the woman who admires him for what he has become. And unlike his wife, she cannot judge him for what he used to be. She can't remember that he couldn't pay the light bill the 6th month of their marriage and the lights got turned off. She admires him for the successful man. Middle years. He's been working for 20. His kids are grown or out of school or about to be. He's finally learned how to manage his money. He dresses right. He walks right. He conducts himself like a man. He has learned how to be a man by every definition of it, and somebody somewhere sees him for that man he has become. And she cannot judge him for what she doesn't know, because she didn't see him in those days. So the other woman contrasts with his wife just in that simple way. The other woman admires him. The other woman remembers. You can answer the question yourself. I don't think it's a hard question to answer. Who has the greatest appeal? The one kissing my foot said, "Oh, you are such a prince. You're wonderful. You're the one." Proverbs doesn't call her the other woman. Proverbs calls her the strange woman. Proverbs 2:16, the strange woman flatters with her lips. Her mouth is smoother than oil. She wins him by the flattery of her tongue. I love it. You've been married 20 years, your wife ain't flattering you much. But somebody will. Now, I hope you wives are. I hope you do. But you know, I'm just talking generically about the odds here. She admires him, she compliments him, she brags on him, she flatters him, she does not nag him, insult him, or remind him of his failures. Proverbs continues. Chapter 2:17. It describes the other woman as she has forsaken the instruction of her youth. I could spend a little time on this, and I don't have it. It's a catchy phrase, let me tell you why. Instruction of her youth indicates, okay, we're not talking about some sleazy slut who was raised badly, the wrong side of the tracks. We're talking about somebody who was well bred. She was instructed by a loving father and mother. She learned manners and decency. She's a good person. She's not a tramp. She's a good person. But she chose to walk away from what she knew was better in order to flatter a man. She forgot her covenant with God. 2:17 continues. But then chapter 5:4 says that in the end of her days she will be a bitter person. Proverbs describes the man who takes up with the other woman. He will be frustrated. He will lose his wealth to those he doesn't really know. And in his old age, he will come to regret what he has done, the choices he has made. It also gives advice to the married man who is tempted by the other woman. In Proverbs 5:19, he makes an aside to his references about the strange woman, and he lectures a man just briefly, just for a moment. And in Proverbs, you'll see that he says, think of her as the loving hind. A hind is a deer. I don't know what that means. I looked it up a couple of times because I never thought of my wife as a deer. I have thought of her as a hind a few times. Hey, it's a deer. It's a different kind of deer. It's like a gazelle. Or an Ewok. Is Ewok a creature? That's not. So I just paraphrase what I think it means. Think of your wife as beautiful. Number two, in that same lecture, he says, and let her breast satisfy you. It's a very physical description of intimacy. It means don't be looking elsewhere, just be looking there. So your husband can look other women in the eye, but it's all right if his gaze drops when he's talking to his wife. Proverbs says so. And then number three, he says, and be always ravished with her love. Basically, he is just telling a husband, satisfy yourself with your wife always. If you stay satisfied with your wife, you won't be tempted by the other woman. And that's the simple message he's trying to give us. Be satisfied with the wife. Well, the problem with that is, remember, the wife is not the other woman. She's the nag woman. So here's Proverbs lessons that a wife should learn. The other woman's appeal is her tongue. The wife's disgrace can be her tongue. Proverbs says the contentions of a wife are like a dripping on a rainy day. We've got one little place sitting in a recliner where when it's raining, the rain runs around the wicket up by the fireplace. There's no gutter up there, and it's 2 stories, and it just drops right outside that window. And on typical rainy days, it's just dip, 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 dip. It never stops. Dip, dip. I threw mulch in it one time. I'm too lazy to put more mulch in it. The mulch helped for a while until it formed a little puddle in the mulch. It took about an hour. And then it dip, 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 dip. It never shuts up. And it's ironic that that's the way Proverbs described a wife who's in danger of losing her husband to the other woman, because if she's constantly contending with him, she comes across to him like a continual dripping on a rainy day. Proverbs is even funnier in 21:19 when he says, you'd be better off to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and angry woman. There's one more that I didn't put in that he throws in, and it paraphrases attic. Better to live in the rooftop, better to live in the attic than you are in a wide house with a brawling or contentious woman. You have a big old mansion, and one contentious woman can make it so miserable you'd be happier living in the attic. Now, if that seems a little harsh, well, hang on. We'll probably get harsher in the next 7 minutes. What Proverbs is actually trying to do is teach us. It's trying to help us. Lessons that a wife should learn. We started with number 1, not contend, not argue. Number 2, if a man is commanded to be ravished with her love, then he's got to be able to find that love. You can't simply find a cold shoulder, an angry woman, bitter memories, not tonight, not now, not until you, not. You cannot be ravished with the love of a woman if she's not loving you. So the command to a man is not meant to be just one-sided, because you cannot make anyone love you. You can't make anyone trust you. You can't make anyone respect you. All you can do is be what you are and hope that you get lucky enough that the person you're with respects you for what you are and what you're trying to become, and then doesn't have a long-term memory. describes, we use this sometimes at Mother's Day, this passage, Proverbs 31. But let's use it in conjunction with marriage for a moment, because in chapter 31, Proverbs says that a wise wife, a virtuous woman, does her husband good and not evil all the days of his life. She takes care of her family. And then he has this phrase in here which throws back to the other woman. In her tongue is the law of kindness. So in the long run, the other woman cannot be competed with by the wife. It's not about you competing with the other woman. That's going to come sooner or later and cross his path. And I wouldn't suggest that you compete. A man simply has to make a choice whenever that opportunity crosses his path, and it will at some point in his life. And I guess the point of this is that his choice is just made a lot easier when his wife is a loving and kind woman. I don't know why sometimes we just continue to repeat patterns. We marry, we fight, we divorce, and then we remarry, and then we're amazed that we just knew the second marriage was going to be so different from the first one, and then we're amazed because it turns out to be so similar. And at some point you would think that we would all become more introspective and say, what am I doing that either one makes me attracted to that kind of person, or two, that continues to duplicate in my relationship with man or woman, continues to duplicate what I'm experiencing here. A lot of our marriage problem comes down to nothing more intense than this. If you don't have a lot of grace when you marry, and you don't bring into marriage a ton of ability to forgive and erase and forget, just erase it, throw it away, and don't bring it up. If you don't bring a ton of that into marriage, you're not going to have a very happy marriage. And listen, there are a lot of marriages not happy. I know a lot of people that are going to stick it out to the end, but they're not happy, and they're probably never going to be happy. And you don't have to be. You don't have to be happy. You can survive marriage without being happy, and you can, do the best you can, be a Christian, do the will of God, move on, and you can die an old man or an old woman and never have known bliss or happiness or intimacy on any major scale, and that's fine. You can do that. But at some point you would think that we would wake up and realize that the problems that I had with a girlfriend, boyfriend, a husband, or a wife, if I see those problems occurring again, it is unfair for me to just say, I guess that's just what marriage is. At some point, we have to start working on us. Just us. Working on you doesn't change the other person. If they're a shrew and you work on you, they're still going to be a shrew when you get through. But working on you keeps you from fighting the other person and then becoming so bitter and angry and mad at life that you destroy who you are. And the truth is, if you're in a rotten relationship, it should not make you a rotten person. You ought to be able to rise above it and just say, I'm going to be the best man that I can be, regardless how she treats me. If Christ expected me to turn the other cheek to a man on the job who slaps one, and I can do it because I'm a good Christian, then I come home and she wants to slap it, and by God, she's not going to do that. How can I do it on the job or in school and turn the other cheek and forgive and let it go and not have a grudge, and then come home and demand excellence in her performance or his performance? I can't. The same cheek I turn on the job, I got to turn at the house. I don't want to, don't like it. I want her to understand my needs. I want her to know where I live, what I think. But if she's not, demanding and screaming and fighting doesn't change her. It makes her withdraw, build bigger fences around her, toughen up her biceps, get ready for the fight. We're going to fight, fight, fight. The only way to fuse a fight, according to Scripture, soft answer. A soft answer turns away wrath. He doesn't just mean, hey, if you just learn to talk nicely, they won't get mad. It's bigger than that. You can't give a soft answer unless you've already softened the heart that wants to retaliate. See, I can look you right in the eyes with more hatred in my eyes. I can talk. I can get out of Clint Eastwood's. I can make my day. And you know that I'm not kind to you. I'm just in control now. Slap me and see what happens to you, because I got my hormones are down now. And that's not what he's talking about, just the tone of your voice. He's talking about a softened heart will give you that soft answer. And you've got to do that whether your spouse responds and reciprocates to you or not. And then you might not make it in marriage, but at least you can look in the mirror and say, I have been the best man I could be. And we're still going nowhere with lies and deceit and cover up and hatred. And I talked to a guy just this past week, in fact, that divorced at 45 years old. Told me he'll probably never ever remarry. And so I picked his brain. I want to know why. And so he started telling me his wife lied and hid. She would spend money and lie to him, and spend money and lie to him. And they went broke 2 times and went to counselors, and she went to therapy, and one doctor even put her on drugs because she had this money. She couldn't stop spending money. And I said, after I got the whole story, I said, whatever happened to your ex-wife? He said, my ex-wife has gone through 3 men and broke all of them financially. But at least one of them she got a house out of. It's sad. It's sad. Now, he's bitter today. He's a bitter, angry man. He didn't have to be. He didn't have to be. He could have, if he still had to get a divorce and he left her, he could have divorced her. But he could have made sure that he lived up to every principle that he's supposed to live up to the best of his ability. You know, even the Bible tells us, hey, live at peace with men. Has enough sense to put a little caveat on there. Inasmuch as is possible, live at peace with all men. Inasmuch as lieth within you. So you can live at peace on the job, you can live at peace at home. The point of Proverbs lecture to us is not like a commandment to the wife, hey, he's got to be ravaged by you, so you be available, and so on and so forth. It's just telling us these are the dynamics that make it work. Now, if you don't want it to work, then here's what you do. Do the opposite of what Proverbs has told you to do. So if a man is supposed to admire you and he loves you, and your body is supposed to belong to him, 1 Corinthians 7, your body for the wife has no power over her own body, her body belongs to him, and likewise the husband, his body belongs to his wife. And so if you're supposed to belong to each other for the fulfillment of each other, but every time your spouse comes to you in a loving mood, you want to say, oh, is this makeup time? Well, you're a charmer, aren't you? Yeah, that's a way to light the candles and keep the passion alive in your marriage. So it's a little hard to be ravished with the love if the love has been replaced by a bad memory of bitter times and bitter things. And so I think of that song, one of my favorite songs, Martina McBride. Y'all remember that song? You can love someone for all the right reasons, and in a moment they can choose to walk away. Love them anyway. I love that song. You cannot force love in a marriage. You cannot prohibit the other woman ever walking across your husband's path. But you can be wise enough to know that the day is going to come. He may never walk through the door and say to you, you're not going to believe what a woman said to me today. He may be smart enough not to tell you that. But trust me when I tell you that when a man becomes successful and comes into his middle years, and he has learned how to dress and act and conduct himself, and he's learned how to manage money, and he's got a little bit of wherewithal that actually makes him look independently sufficient and strong, at some point, some woman is going to cross his path and say all the right things to him. And if all the right things have been done in that marriage, that woman will get a, well, thank you very much. And he'll walk right on. But if there has been no possibility of ravishing himself with her love, If there is no way he can be satisfied with her breasts because they're always at the plastic surgeon, or they cost too much to touch. If there is no way that he gets a loving, kind word from her because she remembers too many things he has done wrong, then I can tell you, when that other woman crosses his path, she will have so much power to turn his head and move his heart. And it's sad because it doesn't have to happen if we both play the game according to Proverbs' admonition. Love and make yourself lovable in return. You can't hold grudges about past mistakes. That concludes blueprint number 8, the other woman.